His statement, and I now pass the floor to the Russian Federation.
Thank you, Madam President. We would like to say that we welcome the appointment of Jan Kubiš as a special envoy and head of UNSMIL, and would like to thank him for the report on the situation in Libya. Madam President, this March, we had the 10th anniversary, not only from the beginning of the Syrian crisis, and this is something that literally a few days ago we were being repeatedly reminded of by our Western colleagues. There is another sad but no less important date, which they prefer not to recall. 10 years ago, by grossly perverting the Security Council Resolution number 1973, NATO started bombing strikes against Libya, which resulted in the collapse of the state, plunged the country into a fratricidal war, and also resulted in growing extremism and the appearance of terrorists, and also destabilized Mali and the region of Saharan Sahel as a whole, and also resulted in an uncontrolled migration in the Mediterranean. From the very beginning, Security Council Resolution 1970 was violated when, in support of the NATO operations in Libya, arms supplies began, and also foreign instructors and special forces worked there. The Libyan people went through a lot of suffering during this decade as they tried to restore peace, and we do hope that this suffering was not in vain. We call on our Western colleagues not to forget this terrible lesson, the lesson for which the Libyans are still paying, and to, in future, refrain from interfering in the internal affairs of independent states, including Libya. Today, we are witnessing yet one more sad date, by the way. It's the 22nd anniversary of the beginning of the NATO strikes against Yugoslavia. Madam President, in the course of the past 2 weeks, the Libyans made a very important step towards peace in their country. The Prime Minister Abdelhamid Dbeibah formed a new interim government of national unity, which received the vote of confidence from the parliament. Also, members of the Presidency Council, headed by Mohamed Menfi, were sworn in. It is symbolic that these activities took place in Tripoli, Sirte, and Tobruk. This is a sign of the unification of the Libyan society. We also have a positive assessment of the information we're receiving about a ceremony in Benghazi, where the authorities of the east of the country transferred their powers to the Government of National Unity. We welcome the formation of new civilian authorities in Libya. Their goal is to prepare the country to universal elections, which is something that's planned for December at the end of this year. And this is not an easy task. They will need to conduct a lot of work to normalize the situation as quickly as possible, to form unified governance bodies, to unified state structures, financial and economic institutions, and also to create a unified armed forces. But the most important that the Libyans will have to do is to overcome the burden of mutual distrust, which resulted from this long-standing conflict. We are convinced that resolving all of these issues and laying firm groundwork for Libyan national dialogue could be done through inclusivity which would take into account the interests of representatives of all regions and all political forces, including the supporters of the former Jamahiriya and of the Libyan National Army. we in turn stand ready to help as much as we can to the stabilization in Libya, and to do this inter alia through contacts with all Libyan representatives, urging them towards a constructive stance, and also by continuous support to the efforts deployed by the Special Envoy Kubish. The important role in upholding the ceasefire regime is being played by the Joint Military Committee 5+5, and we call upon all Libyan parties to display restraint, uphold their commitments they undertook within the ceasefire agreement. We also urge for compliance with the arms embargo on Libya. We welcome the steps undertaken in order to unblock communications between various regions of the country. They will help normalize the life of ordinary Libyans, and with the distribution of humanitarian assistance. We underscore that when considering the situation in Libya, the international community needs to be guided by the decisions that are developed, agreed, and endorsed by the Libyans themselves. And in this regard, we took note of the report by the advanced team on of the UN Advanced Team on Ceasefire Monitoring, which continues their work in Libya. An important element of the normalization of the situation is a dialogue to make sure that the oil sector is working in a stable manner, with the understanding that the natural resources of the country belong to all of its citizens. It is also necessary to ensure there is order in the financial and economic areas. And in this regard, we'd like to express our concern with the fact that we receive a growing amount of information. They come into the subsidiary bodies of the Security Council, and they state that part of the frozen of Libyan assets are being used for their servicing. We would like to remind here that the Western companies are given the task of not enriching themselves at the expense of the Libyans, but rather of safeguarding their assets. We do keep hearing about the Russian military in Libya, and we have also stated on many occasions that there are no Russian military in Libya. If some of our Russian nationals are in Libya, they do not represent the Russian state. By the way, we have stated on many occasions about the inaccuracies in the information from the panel of experts, because they just simply transfer the information that's leaked to them from various sources. This is something that is very easy to disprove, and this was disproven by Russian journalists. And this is something that is freely available in the internet. We advise our colleagues to the conclusion on the panel by the panel of experts, stating that their own nationals are active in Libya. Clearly, that some of these operations that they're involved in are impossible to conduct within governmental support. So instead of accusations against us, what you should be doing is look at yourself in the mirror. Madam President, we would like to react to comments made about the interim report made by the chair of the 1970 Sanctions Committee. Since the final version of the document was not endorsed by the committee, we would not like to publicly raise the sensitive issue of its agreement. Nonetheless, we have to react to the hints made here and clarify that the report was not agreed because of a divergence of opinions on how legitimate was the EU Irene operation is. We are in favor of making sure that we call a spade, and we reflect all opinions, even unfavorable opinions, in our stance. I thank you.
I thank the representative of the Russian Federation for